Welcome to my homestead, y'all. I'm your host, Jenny Velicky, also known as the Funky Farm Girl. I'm working to create a home with a little farm, a little faith, a lot of food, and a bit of funky. I'm learning all about growing and preserving our food supply, raising chickens and children, and becoming more self-sufficient while leaning hard on Jesus. And I want to take you along for the ride. So grab yourself a cup of something wonderful and let's visit a while. Hey y'all, this is Jenny Velicky and you're listening to the Funky Farm Girl podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Velicky, also known as the Funky Farm Girl. This is episode 61, Homestead Essential Oils Chickens. This is part 2 in a 2-part series. You can listen to last week's episode on Homestead Essential Oils in the Garden on episode 60, so be sure to check that out. Let's start this episode like we do every week with a highlight of what's happening on the homestead this week. This week I have been working on the pumpkin patch, making sure to move some of my volunteer plants that have sprouted up in there, doing some weeding and relocating the birdhouse gourd and loofah gourd vines. And so now that I have that all set up, I have room for all the pumpkins to begin growing, and I'm very excited to see this part of the garden begin to take shape and fill in like the main garden has. I also began my canning season with 20 pints of pickles. I'm so excited to finally be canning. You can follow me at the Funky Farm Girl on Instagram to see all the different things that I'm canning this season. So this is, again, the Homestead Essential Oils 2-part series. Last week was part 1 on the garden, episode 60, if you want to go back and listen to that one, if you missed it the first time around. And this is part 2 on chickens. Now, in each of these episodes, I want to make sure that I have a disclaimer at the beginning. I am not affiliated with, nor do I endorse only one specific essential oil company. I believe that you can look and find pure therapeutic grade oils from more than one company. And so last week I was able to give you the names of several of the ones that I use, and also a link in the show notes for episode 60 where there's an article to the top 10 essential oil companies for 2021. I recommend that you check that out and do your own research and determine what essential oil company you will use. Just promise me you don't order from Amazon or buy from a department store. Those are not going to be pure therapeutic grade oils. If you have any questions about that, feel free to email me, Jenny at thefunkyfarmgirl.com, and I'm happy to walk you through whatever questions you have about getting started with essential oils. But again, what I'm sharing in these 2 episodes is just my own personal experience and is not a sales pitch in any way. So I hope the information is useful to you as you expand or maybe even just begin your journey with essential oils by using them on your homestead. So let's get into today's episode. This week I want to talk about chickens and oils. And I want to divide that up into 2 main categories, the maintenance side and then the treatment side. There's going to be things that I do to maintain good health in my flock, and then there's going to be things that I do when problems come up with my flock. And so first I want to go over what I use for maintenance stuff. We need to talk about their coop, we need to talk about their run, we need to talk about their feed, and we need to talk about their water. And so when I consider those basics, what is it I'm doing with essential oils to keep my flock healthy? First of all, with my chicken waterer, I want to make sure that I'm not growing algae in my containers that I'm using for water. And so I am going to do a drop of thieves oil for every gallon of water. This oil is called Thieves. It's from Young Living. It's also called On Guard from doTERRA. So if you look for that from whatever company you're with, they may have a slightly different name for it. But I use 1 drop of that per gallon of water just to make sure that it's keeping my water nice and clean and keeping out germs and other things that may be trying to be part of the water supply. Then when I go to feed my chickens, our chicks and younger adolescent birds are on a hopper type feeder, so I'm not able to do this with them at this point. But once they graduate and move to one of the 2 main runs that we have for our laying hens, then they begin to get the chicken feed spray on their food. I'm scooping and putting out food for those chickens every single day. And so I have a 16-ounce spray bottle in which I put 2 drops of oregano oil. And those oils are antibiotic and antiviral, and they will help to prevent all kinds of different sicknesses and illnesses from taking hold. And so I'm going to fill a spray bottle with water after I put those 2 drops of oil in it, and I put that just right in there with my chicken feed container, and then I shake it and spray it over the food before I give it to them each morning. So we've got the food covered, we got the water covered, and now we just need to worry about their living quarters, their coop, and their run. So what I use in this case is Thieves Cleaner. Now, Thieves Cleaner is specifically a Young Living product, and it's one that I really, really love and have yet to find an equal to from any other company. It's highly, highly concentrated, and so just a little bit goes quite a long way, and 1 little bottle will last you forever, even though you use it for virtually everything. I used it quite a bit in last week's episode on the garden, so be sure to check that out. But for this week, what we're using it for is cleaning the chicken coop. So once I scoop everything out and I'm ready to put fresh down, before I do that, I'll spray down the chicken coop with the Thieves Cleaner, 1 little capful mixed with water in a 16-ounce spray bottle. And I'll spray everything down, wipe it down. I will maybe even spray the ground of the run with this, and it kind of will help to repel some of the pests and flies and things that will want to come in there. It doesn't last too long for that, but it does help, just in the immediate future for that. But definitely helps keep their coop indoor area nice and clean and free of germs and yucky stuff. So now that we've got our chickens set up and they're well maintained, then we just have to watch for problems that might arise. And as you know, the few problems that we tend to have with chickens are fairly simple ones. Sometimes they might have a respiratory issue. Sometimes they might have an injury. Sometimes they have pests that are bothering them. And sometimes they're just stressed out. So let's look at how we can treat each of those issues with essential oils. So first off, we have a respiratory blend. And this respiratory blend is good for when you see chickens that have labored breathing. Maybe they have discharge from the top of their beak, or maybe even crust around it to show that they're having trouble with respiratory issues. And so you're going to take 2 drops each of peppermint, eucalyptus, tea tree, lemon, and cardamom. And you're going to drop that into 20 drops of fractionated coconut oil. And fractionated coconut oil is just coconut oil that remains in a liquid form. It does not go solid like the kind that you would cook with. So you put that in a little bottle, and then you're going to want to shake that well, and then you can apply 1 drop of that underneath the wings to help with any respiratory issues that come up. So again, that's 2 drops each peppermint, eucalyptus, tea tree, lemon, and cardamom with 20 drops of fractionated coconut oil. Next up, we want to cover what to do if you have cuts and wounds. Anytime you have a cut, you've got to make sure that you're trying to keep it clean, and you want to make sure to guard against infection, and this essential oil blend can help you to do that. So you're going to do 2 drops each of tea tree, oregano, lavender, and chamomile. So again, those are oils that are going to be calming and also antibacterial to the skin so that it can begin to heal that wound and guard against infection. We're going to put that into 16 drops of fractionated coconut oil and then use 1 drop of that blend on the wound as needed. So again, 2 drops each of tea tree, oregano, lavender, and chamomile. And then use that as needed on the wound. Now, another thing that you can do is if you have pest control that you need to do. Maybe you've noticed mites on one of your chickens, or maybe you've begun to notice mites, or maybe there's a great number of flies, anything like that where you're having trouble with pests in the chicken run or on the chickens themselves. So you can do a blend of 2 drops each tea tree, peppermint, and eucalyptus. And you can mix that into 12 drops of the fractionated coconut oil. Again, 2 drops each tea tree, peppermint, and eucalyptus with 12 drops of fractionated coconut oil. And again, you're just going to do 1 drop per bird. And then you could also put this on rags, maybe 2 to 5 drops on each rag, and hang them along the fence line or maybe at the opening of their coop. You do not want to put it into an enclosed space. So you would want to hang it like at the door of their coop, along the fence line. You probably need about 5 rags with 2 to 5 drops on each rag to cover an 8 by 8 foot space for pest control. And then last but not least, sometimes your birds are just stressed out. They might be extra flighty and anxious. It may be just because of stress. It may be because they've had a recent predator attack and they're just on hyper alert and they need help calming down. It's also good in the winter time when they get kind of bored, so they kind of start messing with each other. And maybe there's some issues in your personalities there in your flock. This can help to settle them down a little bit. So you're going to want to do 2 drops each of chamomile, marjoram, and lavender. And all 3 of those are great calming oils. And we're going to put that into 20 drops of fractionated coconut oil. So 2 drops each of chamomile, marjoram, and lavender into 20 drops of fractionated coconut oil. So you can either put this, again, 1 drop on each chicken, or you can do the essential oil rags again, where you just put 2 to 5 drops on a rag and hang them in different spots within their run. Again, keep these out of enclosed spaces. You're going to want to put this where there's plenty of fresh air circulating. And 5 of those rags at 2 to 5 drops each would cover an 8x8 space. So that's really all there is to it with chickens. If you're feeding them good quality food, you're keeping their space clean and dry, and you're maintaining their clean water, you're generally not going to have a lot of issues with chickens that need intervention. I do want to highly recommend the book, the Homesteader's Natural Chicken Keeping Handbook by Amy Fewell. I used this book as a reference in coming up with the things that I use in my own chicken flock, and also the recipes that I shared here with you in this episode. So I want to give Amy credit for providing those recipes to us in her book. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes so that you can check it out for yourself. And this book is not just about oils, but also about tinctures and herbal remedies. It's about developing your own feed mix, incubating and hatching chicks, selling eggs to either eat or to hatch. It just walks you through step by step from flock in raising a healthy flock from start to finish. I highly, highly recommend this book. Amy is very experienced when it comes to raising chickens. She is also the founder of the Homesteaders of America organization, and she's just a great, great resource when it comes to natural chicken keeping. So be sure to check out her book, and thank you, Amy, for this invaluable resource as I was getting this episode ready. I hope that this has been helpful in how to start using essential oils on your homestead. Not just for your personal use or for cleaning your home, but how to use the essential oils both in your garden, as we talked about last week, and for your chickens, like we're talking about this week. If this episode was helpful to you, please consider sharing it with a friend. As always, you can always send me your questions or feedback to jenny@thefunkyfarmgirl.com. See you next week.
Thanks for stopping by, y'all. If you're inspired by what you've heard today, the best compliment you can give me is to share the Funky Farm Girl with your friends. You can stay connected by following the Funky Farm Girl on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until we meet again next week, remember to bloom where you're planted.